Great. Okay, let's get started with some subscription management. Uh, Everything's coming through on the screen, okay?
Yep. Yeah, we're able to see.
Okay. So today we're going to be talking about subscription management and give you an overview of what we have in Quebec and Rome and how do we actually use it. We'll also talk about some of the differences if you haven't upgraded from Paris yet to Quebec or Rome, and if you have some things to watch out for as we get started. I'm Adam Stout, an outbound product manager for Creative Workflows and App Engine, and I love subscription management. So let's get into a little bit more. First important thing, what are we trying to do today? We're going to talk about what's in subscription management. What is it that I see? And then specifically, how do I set up subscription management to handle my per user subscriptions? And we'll talk about what that means and what you need to set up and what you don't need to set up. We're not going to be talking about your specific subscriptions because of the nature of this. I can't answer something about something you're seeing specifically, but I do want to explain where you can do, how do you get help? What is it that you're actually seeing? Feel free to drop questions in the Q&A as we're going, and my fellow panelists will ping me as we go through. And we are going to go with the agenda. We're going to be talking about what is in Quebec and Rome. In case I let something slip about what's coming in the future, we have a safe harbor slide. So please don't make any buying decisions based off of things that aren't there today. But again, we're going to be focusing in on what's in Quebec and Rome.
Adam, just had a question from the chat.
First of all, again, that intro into subscription management. Then we're going to focus in on per user subscriptions. That's the really important thing you need to know about, that you need to do something to make work correctly. And we're going to talk about governance and how do I actually get subscription management to work for me. And then we're going to get into this demo. In the demo, we're going to walk through setting up a per user subscription. So make sure we pay attention when we get to there. And then we'll wrap up with some additional resources and answer any questions we didn't get to. Again, please feel free to drop those questions in the Q&A as we're going. So first of all, what's in subscription management? What are the types of subscriptions we're looking at? There are a few other types. They're noted in the documentation here, but the four main types you're going to see are per user, and per user is covering anything that handles fulfillers or app users where a user matters. We pay per user. It's managed by groups. And so we're going to talk about how we set up our groups, but it's managed by groups, but it's audited by roles. When our compliance team looks at your instance and we're doing a compliance report, it is based off of the roles the users have, but we configure subscription management with groups, which should line up. Next is unrestricted user. We separate this out from per user because per user, we're effectively looking at roles. Unrestricted user, we're counting who's in CIS user. There's a few slight variations with that, but ostensibly we're just looking at how many users are in a table, how many have a profile. Next is capacity. Capacity, each one is different. This is really important. So if we're looking at something in the ITOM space and SecOps, we're paying per device or with subscription units. Those are capacity, where we run a query or a script and get a count of something. Really important note here. Every one of these capacity definitions, it can be different. They certainly share some, but it's very important to understand what the product code is, what you purchase, so we can get you the right answer if we do have a question about a capacity definition. And then display only is the other type we'll see, where it is something we're not currently measuring. The subscription shows up, it's there, it'll be marked as display only. There is no measure. For these are the four main types we see. Per user, we need to set up, we need to configure on our instance. UU, capacity, and display only, there's nothing for us to do. It's giving us the number. And if we have a question about that, we just need to find out how it's there and what do we need to do to get it to be the number we want it to be. But per user, it's very important we set up so that we get it's only as good as the information we put in. Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about what we've changed from Paris and pre-Paris going through Quebec and Rome going forward. There's a big change, and some of you have seen it, some of you haven't, but we have moved from a reactive subscription reporting model to a proactive subscription management model. In the past, you just got to report, you got to bill, you're out of compliance. And the most we could do is give you the big long list of users that have that. It's all we can do is respond to the overages, and it's always late, right? We've already gone over. And that's not what we like to be, what we wanted to do. So in Quebec, we went back and we looked at how do we help you actually manage your subscriptions. We want the right users to have the license they need. And if they don't need it, then we don't want them to have it. We never want to go out of compliance in the first place. So that is why we're talking about everything we're doing, is to make this transition possible. All right, so that seems very jargony to me, and I wrote it. So what do we mean by proactive user-based subscription management? What does that mean? So the first thing is, it's about governance to prevent surprises. There were a couple days a year I like surprises. Most of the time I don't, and I do not like surprises at work, and I do not like surprise bills. So we want to be proactive so we have no surprises. The next part to make this work, it's using the service catalog and using a workflow. We need to engage a workflow to enforce our governance. And governance is not just yes or no, but there's decisions that need to be made, things that need to be looked up, considerations that come in. We want to use a service catalog to make that happen. With that service catalog, we can use a workflow or use a flow, and that's where our governance comes into place. So things like, does this, I want to be added to a group. Does this group need a subscription? If it doesn't, okay, then just make it happen. But it does need a subscription. Okay, well, does the user who's being added to the group already have it? Is there going to be a commercial impact or not? Does the subscription itself, is it per user or is it capacity? And again, it has to do with the number of subscription units, not the number of users. Is it per user or not? Is the subscription allocated? All right. We don't have a hard switch to stop you from going over. So in the governance model, if you want to have a hard switch, if you want to have a limit to say, we will not go over our limit ever, then you can enforce that in your model. Or do I want to do something more custom to say, hey, if you're in IT and you want ITSM and you don't have it, just go ahead and approve that. Just make it happen. But if you're not in IT and you want ITSM, I need to have some approvals. What does your governance model look like? That is up to you. We're giving you the information so that you can then build that in yourself and enforce it. Question I get is, what do you mean groups, right? We had user sets, and what groups? I have something new to set up. No, there's nothing new to set up in terms of groups. When I say groups, I mean groups. We're not reusing anything. This is SIS user group. We should all be using this today. It's the same groups you already put users into. Awesome. I don't have to worry about the actual user management. It's the same group you're already adding roles to. Awesome. I don't have to worry about that either, the security side. All we're doing now is associating the entitlement to it as well. We'll talk a little bit more about why that is, but we already have users and roles in the security. We're just putting the entitlement in there. I know where things go. We're just using what we already have, right? Nothing new. We're actually we got rid of user sets. So there is not one more thing to manage. Okay, and why groups? The security best practice is that we already are assigning users to groups and roles to groups. So we should already be doing that. If we're not, we're going to talk about that a little bit later. We need to be assigning users to groups and roles to groups. That makes the entitlements to groups work as well. The roles do provide access, right? So we have to provide roles. I can't fake not having roles. But groups provide context for me. Why does this user have the role? A group adds this layer into that to understand that and explain it. And then the final thing that gets me, that I go with, that I have to go with groups, is that groups have managers. So I have somebody who can be held accountable for, are the right people in this group? And does the group need all this access? And is this the right subscription for this group? This is key. Being able to use my group managers to make sure that the right people have the right access and are being billed to the right subscription. That's what I get from groups that I did not get from roles. And then I can audit as a manual process. If I have 2,000 users, if I have 1,000 users that have ITSM, that hurts my mind on how I'm going to audit that. But if I'm using groups, I now can introduce a process to ask the group managers, are the right people in this group? Anybody here that shouldn't be here anymore? Do you have the right roles associated? Are these the things that you need to be able to do? And based on what you're doing, are we billing this to the right subscription? I can take 1,000 users then, spread it out across 100 groups that I might have. And I have different people who can now handle this in manageable chunks. Just as roles, this is incredibly difficult, but groups gives me the structure to make sure that I can audit that as well, right? And make sure I can harvest the right licenses. I don't want to pay for something that nobody needs, right? Nobody wants to do that. So let's make sure we have the right people with the right licenses. And user limits, I talked about this a little bit before. ServiceNow does not have a hard limit. If you have 1,000 licenses and you have 1,001 people that have it, we'll let you do that today, right? We'll true up, we'll make everything equal, but we're not going to stop you from going from 1,000 to 1,001. If you want to do that, you absolutely have that ability to do that. It's very hard to do today or in the past, but by using roles with the groups and a flow behind it, you can then stop it. I don't know that I want to stop it. What I like to do is then have a way to break the glass so that if I want to go from 1,000 to 1,001, I just need Renee's approval. You know, Renee is my process. I need Renee's approval for lots of things. But if I want to go over, I have a way to go over, right? We need to get this done today. Let's get it done today. And then we'll figure out whether I go buy more licenses because I need more licenses, or I'm able to pull some other licenses from other people. That's okay. We can do that. I want to have a method to be able to do that with the workflow behind it. I can do that. As a little bit of history as we come through, subscription management has been around for a long time. It's evolved. It evolves every release. It has been evolving, particularly the last few. So a couple of key note items you want to see. System entitlement. System entitlement is where we looked at your ACLs and we figured out what license you have. It's actually, it's really easy, but it's the ultimate in reactive processing based on what license or what you're using. You have to get these licenses, but we had to have these rules about which one. There's a lot of magic in the background. It just didn't work well for what we were trying to do. It didn't work well to just say, here's the bill. And again, we wanted to flip that on its flip that over to go, who should have this? And then we'll make sure that that license works, right? We'll make sure they have the right security, not back out what entitlement they need from the security. That was in Paris. It was introduced in Paris. It existed when we first launched Quebec. It has been pulled out of both. With the quarterly patching, nobody should have this on anymore. If you see any references to auto entitlement or system entitlement, doesn't happen on your instance anymore. It should have been removed from the documentation and from the training, but if you see it, it does not exist, to be clear, right? There's a manual effort in here because you need to tell us who's supposed to have this entitlement. Next, let's do with user sets. So user sets were introduced either New York or actually maybe a little bit before then. User sets were a way to query CIS user
way
and go,
before.
here are the people who should have it. Really hard to manage, actually, as it comes through. It was just kind of a mess to come through. It did work if you kept up to date with your user sets, but again, hard to come through. And if you had to slice, if you had overlapping subscriptions, really hard to create these queries that would always move users in and out. When we moved to Quebec, user sets were removed. If you upgraded, you'll still see user sets, but that's just for historical reference. Your user sets were migrated into groups. So we actually created groups to match your user sets if you had them. Going forward, it is groups. We're not going back to user sets. Again, there's some inherent limitations on that methodology that we wanted to get out of. So we have one less thing, and it's just using our groups. And an important note, because I'm talking about flows and having to build some things. In Quebec, your sub-production instances have licenses on them. They're not enforced, but the visibility to them is there, which is new in Quebec, right? Your subscriptions that you used to only be able to see in production are now exposed on your sub-production instances as well. Once they're on Quebec. And that user set migration to groups. It's important. If I went from New York or Orlando or Paris, and I went to Quebec or Rome, and whether you just went from Paris to Quebec or you went from New York to Rome, that would be an exciting week, I'm sure. We migrated your user sets if you had them. The user set migration, really a couple key things about this. One, you'll know that it happened because we created a group that starts out with license user set. We took your license user set, prefixed that, created a group with that name. These groups contain no roles. They're not granting any security access. They were just an artifact. So the subscription management looked the same the day before your upgrade and the day after your upgrade. Very, very important here. These groups are not dynamic. So user sets were a query that ran. The groups are not. The groups were a static. We took who qualified in that as we went through and then moved them over, but they're no longer being maintained. So if somebody new came in the department, they don't get added to the user set. Somebody leaves, gets that role removed, they don't leave the user set. So these are a temporary solution. They're meant to just transition you over. Since we couldn't set up subscription management for Quebec in Paris, we wanted to bridge that gap. But as soon as you upgrade, you want to go in and then move over to groups. Yeah, Lisa.
Can you actually hear me?
I think you're still on mute.
No, I'm not. You don't hear us.
We're all talking.
You can't hear me.
No, we can hear
we
you.
can
All right.
hear us.
This is really great. I'm going to fix that.
I like talking for a really long time. That's the good part there. The nature of live broadcasting, folks.
Just wanted to make sure this works now because there are questions coming in. I think Adam sharing music broke him hearing us.
All right, somebody
Hey,
say
look.
something.
Can you hear us? Can you hear us now?
No.
No. May have to rejoin.
Now I got you.
Yay!
Awesome, great. Yeah, we just wanted to make sure we have a couple questions that were asked. Susan asked in the chat. So if we upgraded from Paris to Quebec and this migration didn't happen, what's the process? They don't have any groups starting with the licensed user set.
So the answer to that's actually pretty simple. There was an issue in an early version of Quebec where if there was some bad data that came through, it didn't create those. So it's not uncommon. And then also if you didn't have user sets created, it didn't come over. And what happens there is we're just going to set up groups. So that's actually exactly the demo we're going to have. This was a Band-Aid solution where you need to go in and get rid of those anyway. So you just don't have anything to clean up. If they didn't migrate, what happened, right? The downside of this was that subscription management said I had 900 users. I upgrade and now it says I have 0 users. We're going to set it up to be correct anyway, going through exactly what we set up. But if it did come over, I had 900, I still have 900. That's actually going to start to drift from being correct. So I'd want to remove the user sets and then build out my groups anyway.
Awesome, thanks so much.
Yeah, it won't impact us. All right, did I miss anything else? Nope. Okay, it's wonderful to hear your voice. I can go
Yay.
for 20 minutes and just hear.
Well,
my
we've
voice.
heard you if that makes you feel any
Yeah, that is
better.
better. That does make me feel a little bit better. Okay, so figuring out again coming through, it's all about temporary use. It helps you get over, helps you bridge the gap. Once you've configured this, you want to go just delete those user set groups. They're not helping you here. It was just so that we could operate for that week or two between upgrade and when I have time to configure subscription management for me. All right, and then the key to this, as we've talked about, is some workflow behind it. So this is an example one I built that we're going to walk through what this does. But to integrate subscription management into workflows, that's how we get governance that scales. That is what we're trying to get to, not just a dump. We don't want to just send you a bill. We don't want to have to spend a bunch of time figuring out who has this license, why do they have this license. We want to have a workflow in place, a flow in place that implements the governance that I want. Who should approve this? That's something you have to decide, but we can easily configure that in Flow Design. All right, so we're going to walk through a few use cases and a few things that I want to call out, right? As we go through these, who needs to approve for a license? I need to understand that. I need to figure out who do I want to approve using a license. Does the group manager approve before that person or not? If they're not the person, I need somebody else to approve. Do I want to get approval to be in the group and then get a license, or to use the license and get a group? There's multiple tiers here. There's multiple ways of doing it. There is not a right answer for everybody. There's a right answer for you. So that's why you need to build the flow on what you want to have. Do I want some type of pre-approvals? Again, if I want to have access to ITSM, consume an ITSM license, and I know you're in these couple departments, do I have the metadata in place to say, yeah, I don't need an approval for that? But if I want to be added to HR, maybe I do. And then what do I do if it's fully allocated? This is one that you do need to think about. What happens? Do I have a hard limit? Just going, no, it's just automatically denied. Do I need some approval? Do I want to allow it, but then just buy more licenses? What do I want to do? Do I want to kick off any other part of the workflow? Really important things to consider building it out. And we're going to walk through a couple of use cases where we're going to do what this workflow does, where I am taking a bunch of these things into account. So the items to note, to pay attention to, we're going to go through a couple of use cases quickly are, what is the user's current group membership? What's the user's department? Are subscriptions allocated to the groups or not? Does this group need a subscription? What's the type of subscription? That matters. And then what's the allocation of that current subscription? Are there more seats to allocate or not? So all these key things are going to be what varies, right? We're going to change one thing at a time and then see who has to approve. So the use case we're going to start out with is Arun wants to be added to the database group. Arun is in the development department. The database group requires ITSM Pro, which is a per user subscription for them. It's how they chose to license it. So the approvals that are needed are Arun's manager, because there's a commercial impact and he's not in IT. So, I need to spend money on this license. I want Arun's manager to approve that. And then I need the group manager, the database group, to go, yeah, I'm glad that you have a license. You can also be in my group to do what I want to do. So for Arun to be added to database, his manager and the group manager. Move on to the next one. Eric, who's in the IT department, is already part of the service desk group, wants to be added to the database group, which is in the ITSM, has the ITSM Pro subscription. In this case, Eric's already in the service desk group, which already has the ITSM subscription. So there's no impact in using more subscriptions or less. It's just a security access. Should I be in the database group or not? So the group manager for the database group gets to decide. I don't need Eric's manager's approval because there's no commercial impact. Next, we move on to Stephen, who wants to be added to the database group. Stephen is not in any groups right now, but he is in the IT department. Again, wants to be added to the database group, which requires ITSM Pro. And in this case, I put in the logic to say, if your department is IT, I have gone and pre-approved a list of departments. If you're in one of these departments, we know it, ITSM is part of your job. We don't need, we've pre-approved all of those things. I don't need that extra step. So again, just the group manager needs to approve being added. Next, we have a case where we're out of licenses. So Lily is also in the IT department, like Eric, wants to be added to the database group that requires ITSM Pro. And the important note here is ITSM, we're fully allocated. We have 1,000 licenses. We have 1,000 people who have those licenses. What do I do? Well, in this case, we have put in the flow to say, if we're out of licenses, we need to get approval from the subscription owner, from the process owner. So I have it hard coded in here. Somebody in this group has to approve it. This person has to approve this because they're the ones that ServiceNow is going to call, right? So we have that extra layer of approval. It's not just manager approval, but somebody who owns that subscription has to approve it. If they say no, we're done. And if they say yes, well, the group manager still has to approve it because you're getting access to the database group, right? That's security level. And then we move on, not pre-approved. So we have Leanne, who is not in IT, so doesn't have that pre-approval flow to come through, wants to be added to the database group. It's ITSM Pro. ITSM Pro is fully allocated. Well, in this case, we get everything. So Leanne's manager needs to approve it because there's going to be a commercial impact. The subscription owner needs to approve it because we're going beyond. We're going to have to take action, right? We're going to have to take this license away from somebody. We're going to have to buy more licenses. There's this big impact potential. And then the group manager still has to approve it. So for Leanne to get access, I need 3 different approvals to come through. And now we have one more case to come through. Kevin, who works with Leanne in the sales department, wants to be added to the database group. But on this instance, for this customer, they didn't license it per user. They licensed it with unrestricted user. They have ITSM Enterprise, which is unrestricted user. So everything else is the same, but the license is different. So there's no approval from a process owner because there's no impact. Kevin's manager doesn't need to approve it because it's not per user. We're not paying per user. So we just have the security access. So with one flow, we were able to put in these different checks so that no matter who asked to be added to any group, we have the right level of approvals. I have manager approval all the time. If you don't want to have that, you don't have to. Maybe there's some groups you don't need to have that in. You can configure that. We might be adding a field or two to a sys user group to allow this flow to run. We might have a custom table that shows me who's pre-approved and who's not. I might have to add some more metadata that way, but I can get one flow, one action, and we always have the right level of governance in place.
We had a question coming in for that. Do we have an example flow that covers this?
That's coming out shortly.
Okay.
So we are working that to get that out. I expect I'm gonna have that published next week. We'll put a blog out on the community
Awesome.
post that walks you through how to do that and some of the tips and tricks and how to make that as smooth as possible.
Be sure to send me this so we can also put it in the description for this session. So for everybody who's new to the Academy format, we're doing this presentation now. We're creating a recording and I will edit it and upload this to YouTube. So this will be available to share with your colleagues, your customers, whatever. And I will also put those resources in the video description and also to the community post that goes together with this session.
Thanks, Lisa. Okay, so now we've been talking about subscription management, a lot about subscription management. There is another piece we need to talk about, which is a compliance report provided by ServiceNow. They're slightly different. We're working to address some of these, but I wanted to make sure that you understand how do I translate between what I see in subscription management and what ServiceNow is saying if I'm in compliance or not. So a couple of key differences.
On that note, Adam, could you talk about the administrative model on this? Do you have kind of a defined personality who would be going through and kind of doing the administration for the subscription management?
So that varies, right? So sometimes, and it depends a lot on the size, on your company size and what you have. So we have some smaller customers where the platform owner handles all the subscriptions. In other cases, you have a platform owner, but then you have somebody who manages all the subscriptions. And in some of the larger customers where they have multiple applications coming in and big instances, I might have a different subscription owner for HR, different for CSM, different for ITBM. So it really varies. And that's one of the reasons we don't have the out of the box solution, because it just varies a lot. So we need to talk about how do you build in the flow, and who's responsible can vary as well. To see subscription management, I believe you need to either have admin or you need to have usage admin, those two roles.
Well, thank you so much.
See them use both times.
While we're at it, we have another question from Susan. If there's any suggestions or best practices on how to negotiate removing users from a subscription if you don't want to go over the max. So is there any way to make space? They're currently auto removing users if they haven't logged into ServiceNow within a certain number of days. Is that something that you would recommend, or are there any other input from other people? Maybe how often do they clean up their subscriptions, I guess?
So certainly some people get pretty aggressive about it where it comes through. It's hard to know, and it depends on the groups. I think if I were building something to do it, if I were going to audit it, I would go down the approach of asking those group managers on a periodic basis, right? Maybe once a quarter to go, is everybody in this group still here? And do you as a group manager think you need these things? You are consuming these licenses. So hopefully awareness helps. I get worried about just removing people because just because I haven't logged in 90 days doesn't mean I don't need to do this part of my job when it comes in. You also run into cases where it's a little misleading. So I might be using an ITSM Pro license, but I haven't done anything with ITSM Pro. I just logged into the portal and submitted an HR ticket, a case for HR about something, and you have logged in. It'll keep getting that up there. So I think you have the risk, if you just look at last lockdown, that you're going to remove people who do need access and now have this barrier to get back in, as well as you're going to not be removing people who don't actually need the license. So I think auditing based off of groups is the strongest way to get out there. But that does depend on what your organization and how you run.
Thank you.
Okay, so those differences between the compliance reports and subscription management, what I see there. So the first thing we're talking about is active users only. This is the case, right? I put this on here because I do need to filter out inactive users. If active is false, if they don't show up in subscription management, right? They might show up in the group, but they're not going to show up as subscription management user. Compliance also filters those out as well. So we only look at active users. For users not logged in the last 365 days, subscription management still shows them because they actually still are using a license. Right now, our compliance team, the compliance reports do filter those out. So you'll see a difference. If my subscription management number is higher, then you can go in and just filter those out and the number should match, right? That'll adjust that number. This also is a candidate, again, whether you haven't logged in 90 days and you need it at 91, I might go with. If you haven't logged on in the last 365, certainly I'm going to ask my group managers to go, what's going on with these people? Should they actually just not be active users in the system at all, right? Do they not work here and we just never turned them off? Is it a contract or what's going on? There's something a bit weird here. But again, if I log into ServiceNow to do something else, I'm logged in. So this isn't a great way to harvest, to recapture licenses or to make sure this person needed or not needed. The next is web service only users. So web service only users are users that cannot log in the UI. They can only log into web services, whether it's SOAP or REST, to come in. if you check this box, there's an optional plugin that will show you that box if you're interested in this. The use verification team, the compliance reports filters these users out. Compliance subscription management will still show them. If you want to reconcile the numbers, you filter out the users for the last 365, or who have only include the users who have logged in the last 365, and exclude web service only users. Then our numbers should match pretty closely. With the other big caveat being direct role assignments. So direct role assignments is where I'm ignoring the best practice of assigning roles to groups and users to groups, and I'm directly assigning roles to users. So again, if I'm directly assigning roles to users, we call them direct role assignments. Subscription management doesn't see those because we're always looking at those groups. You want to go back and fix those. Now, how you fix them? Normally, you're either going to just remove it because they don't need it anymore. You're going to add them to an existing group, or you're going to create a new group to put those users in there. Which one? It very much depends, right? It's the users, it's the roles, it's whatever you want to do. The direct role assignments, there are a few things that happen just straight out of the box that do this. I know things like delegated development, or there's some HR roles that go with unrestricted users. The big focus here is if it's a role that deals with, that's a per user license, we always want to go through groups. We always want to go through groups. It is better security and it works with subscription management, but that security, that ability to audit is what's key. I also see a lot of roles where there are direct role assignments where they don't need it anymore. What happened is somebody was transferring into my group. I just got them the role ahead of time, and then they got added to the group after they started. And when that happens, I actually sometimes have the role granted twice. I can remove the direct role assignment. It's fine, right? It doesn't actually make a change. Again, you need to look at it, but any direct role assignment on those licensable roles, which we'll see how to identify those are things you want to address and not have those for security and for subscription management.
We got a couple of questions in the Q&A. Sudhir is asking about a per user and CSM user. They have a couple of purchases which are allocated, even the allocated is showing as 0. So Sudhir is asking about that.
So the most common case for that is that we don't have the groups set up correctly. I have not seen a case where we have groups with active users associated to the subscription and they don't show up. But we'll talk about this in the demo. So we may need to come back to this.
Sure.
But if we go through the steps that we have in the demo and it still shows a 0, then we probably want a case. Something's a bit off there. I don't know what's explaining. I don't know what would cause that. And
Okay.
I've never seen it.
Awesome. We've also got a couple more questions, but we can go through the demo if you'd like first.
Well, I see one in here about web service only users. Web
Yeah.
service only users don't consume a license right now. That in terms of compliance, they don't. That's still, they don't. There is a difference in here. So that's going to get resolved with clear guidance. But today, our compliance, the use verification team is not going to charge you for web service only users. Okay, and then I see the next one, which we'll get to a little bit later. All right, so we've covered what on earth we're talking about, and now everybody likes to ask me after this is, okay, show me, what do I need to do? How does this work? So now we are going to go into a demo. I want to point out with this demo, I am going to walk through the demo relatively quickly. There is a KB article on support that's here. We'll make sure that it's in the notes. It walks through this demo step by step and giving you lots of notes and tips that I'll probably forget to go over. So when you're doing this on your instance, bring up that KB article and read through it. And again, this is all for Quebec and Rome. Quebec, your subscriptions are on your subprod. Do it on a subprod. You can go through this on a subprod, get comfortable with it. We can work out any questions and we'll talk about how to send those in. But this KB article will walk you through how to do it. You can do it in a subprod, then you can do it in production. What are we going to do in the demo? So the key things, there's lots of steps here. And I will introduce this as it's all very easy. It's not very straightforward on what you need to do. There are a bunch of steps we need to get through, which is why that KB article is there. But what we're going to do is we're going to identify the key roles for each subscription. Once we have the roles, which matter, the roles that matter, we're going to identify the applications for that subscription. Then we're going to take the applications, we're going to get the roles for those applications. We're going to identify the groups that have those roles, and then we're going to configure the groups, the subscriptions. When I go see it right now, I just have to know which groups, and we're going to take that magic out of there. So we're going to do a couple exports to Excel because I'm really lazy. I don't like retyping things. So we're going to quickly go through it to get which role types do I care about, the applications from the subscription, the roles for the applications, the groups that have the roles for the applications, and then we're going to connect the groups to the subscription. The reason we do go through all these steps are that a role is not inherently tied to a subscription. Particularly if you have ITSM or CSM, you need to choose which one is the most appropriate one. There are cases that come up, which is why we ask you to do it this way. And then the other piece to this that I'll mention here in case I forget, we have to update the allocations. If there's a job that runs every night, which looks at all the group memberships and then reallocates those people to subscriptions. If I get added to a group, a user gets added to a group, it's handled in that job. If a user comes out of a group, it gets handled in that job. Since we're going to do it live, there is a button you can press which says do this right now. But if not, you'll see what's coming up. And with that, let's go ahead and get to the demo. So I am going to share my screen again.
Do we need the Jeopardy music?
Yeah, which screen is it? That is going to be the ultimate key. There we go.
That looks good.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move a couple things around. Okay, so I have come in to my subscription. So the first thing I'm going to do in my subscription, actually, the first thing I'm going to do is, this is the KB article we're talking about. So we'll see the reference in here, but this walks through a lot of what we just talked about, and then it's going to walk through this demo. Sorry, that's what this one does. And then the key differences, again, if you have a question about the 365, the web service users, this KB article explains to you how do you walk through and reconcile your subscription management report and your and the use verification compliance report. So both those are here for you. So let's go to the demo. And in the demo, I'm going to go to my subscription overview. So I'll type in subscription management. I have subscription overview. Subscription overview is going to give me a list of all my subscriptions, and it all at one place that comes through. So I have a bunch of subscriptions on here for various things. I have not set this up. So one of the things I'm going to see is that everything allocated is 0, except for my grandfather tables has something because it is able to pick that up. Other than that, all my per user stuff is 0. The only all right, so we have that. First thing I need to do is I need to figure out for each of these subscriptions, which role types matter to me, matter for this subscription. So I am going to go back in here, and I need to look at the base table that's in this report. This table is license details. And in license details, I'm going to reset to out of the box. You'll see, I believe, exactly what we saw on that report. I need to add a really important field. So I'm going to come in and personalize this, and I'm going to add measured role types. And what measured role types is going to give me is which types of users matter here. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to filter to my per user subscription. These are the ones I need to configure. The other ones handle themselves automatically. So for these ones, I need to know what matters. So for this one, it's approver users. For everything else, it's fulfiller. For ITBM, I apparently did the wrong thing because this should say requester and fulfiller. This is a list. It can have multiple. ITBM, anything in an app user model is going to be requester and fulfiller, and everything that's fulfiller based is going to be fulfiller. But I want to confirm that. I want to confirm what's here. So we're going to go through and set up ITSM Pro, which is fulfiller. That's very, very important to see. All right, so I'm actually just going to go back into the subscription. I'm going to click on it here, just like I would get from the subscription overview. That value, the requester fulfiller, that's tied to your product code. That's not going to change on you overnight. So once you know it, that's fine. But again, even though I know what they are, I still go look to make sure that it's doing what I think it is. So this is my per user subscription. And a couple of things that I see in the subscription. So one, I have no subscribed users. Next, I have no groups. An important note, I can edit groups here. There's no edit users. We do not add subscriptions to you. We don't add users to subscriptions directly. It is through groups. So that's why there's no edit here, but there is one here. Custom tables, not important for this discussion, but those are important as well as we map our custom tables. Subscription applications. This is important. What this is saying is that ITSM Pro is made up of these applications, these key applications here. This differs depending on what you licensed. ITSM Standard has less, and if you might go to a newer SKU, it might have different things that come in. So it's important. There's not a fixed list for these things. There's this metadata right here. This metadata should not change unless we made a correction or we add something in later on. Sometimes we back in title. So you don't need to refresh this you don't need to look at this very often. But this metadata is correct all the time for your instance. It's checked every night against the master data. Next we have is the associated roles. And what this is saying is, what are the roles for these applications? Again, dynamic. This comes from us. We're telling you what's coming in here. If anything ever changes, it'll get updated that night. Those are the key things we're going to focus on. There's a few more things in here that don't pertain to setting up our groups. So from here, what I need to do is get this list of applications. Ideally, it would come from here, but just on a technical note, you can't just get this list and export it to Excel, because what I want to get is this list. We're going to go through a couple steps to get there. And to sanity check, what I'm looking for is only fulfillers. I only see fulfillers here, but there are requesters in this list. What I am looking for is to get these 36 roles. I need to find all the groups that have any of these 36 roles. To get that list without retyping everything, because I would definitely mistype it, I am going to come into my subscription applications. I'm going to open this in a new window. From here, I have 38, and I just always like to double check. There's 38 applications. I see 38 applications. I'm going to come in and export to Excel. Open this up.
You're showing us the sorcery, right?
Yes. Okay, so I have the applications. I'm going to go ahead and grab these applications. Maybe. There we go. So I have my applications, and now I'm going to go ahead and minimize this. And then from here, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go to my associated roles, open this in a new window. The note here, like this is the big important note, why we're doing this. I want 36 roles. This is showing me 338. That's more than 36. Not all of these need it. It has to do with the way that this form is built. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go to application name is one of those applications. I also already have the filter in here about role type. So I did something wrong.
I said it's sorcery.
Wonder if I didn't. So I'm noticing here that this list starts with P, which means I didn't do this right. So we're going to go open that spreadsheet back up.
Making sausage is not always pretty.
It is not pretty. Easy. Just got to put it in the grinder. We'll be fine. Okay. This does not want, there we go. All right. So I'm getting everything from agent workspace for ITSM down to whatever the last one is. So we're going to come in here. I'll paste that in here and hit run. And now I should get my 36. That's what I was looking for. That's what I have. An important note here for ITSM, if I have ITSM and CSM or I have some other overlapping subscription, I need to decide who's going to go where. So in some customers I've seen, I have CSM, which entitles me to incident, but I don't use incident. We're just using communities and case management. That's the case. You go ahead and alter this, right? If you're saying everybody who has this application is always going to be CSM or everybody who has this is always going to be ITSM, you can adjust this as you're going. In this case, I don't know, so we're just getting everybody. So I have my list of roles. I'm going to export this to Excel. And in this list, I want this list of groups. So we're going to come down and get this whole list of groups. Sorry, list of roles. So I have row 37, I have 36 roles. As a note here, if your role has a comma in it, you can't just do the is one of, because the comma is going to break it. Roles generally don't have commas in them, but they could. So check the numbers that we get things back. I wanted 36, I got 36. We're going to go in, we're going to go back to my instance. The next thing I want to get back to, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this. So we leave it. I have a list of roles that I want to find the groups for. So to find that, I'm going to go to sys user. I'm going to go to sys group because I'm looking for groups. Sys group has role. Again, in the KB article, all these tables are identified. You just copy and paste what we're doing. I now have, I'm seeing 45 group role combinations that come through. This is rather light. This can certainly be in the tens of thousands or 100,000s that come through. And so now we're going to go into where my role name is one of these. And so what I found here is that I have 17 group roles that need this license. And I'm going to come into the group. I'm going to check this because you can actually have duplicates. And this actually is 17. It's possible a group has multiple roles that qualify. I might have change manager and problem manager and incident manager. If I have all of those in one group, it's still only one group. So I have this. I'm going to ungroup this and get this list. And now I'm going to export this to Excel because what I'm really looking for is this list of groups. Now in my list of groups, I'm looking for 17 groups, which I have. And we will go back here. And now what I'm going to do is come back to my subscription, go to my groups, and I want to edit my groups in here. As another note, commas. If you have a comma, we're using is one of. Comma and new lines are the line. So if your group names have commas or your role names have commas, you can use the is one of, but then you need to do you have to do some ors or something to get that worked out. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to do name is one of those 17 groups. I'm going to run filter. That's going to give me my list of groups. This does not always show the full list of groups. It's limited to a certain number of characters. So as you're going through, keep hitting run until this gets to be empty. So if I have hundreds of groups to add, really quick to do, I can do it in one pass, but I need to click run, move the set over, run, move the set over, run, move the set over, and then I can save all the changes. This is where you're going to look at, particularly if I have overlapping groups, is this the right list of groups? So in this case, I'm going to come through here, select the groups, but I do have CSM on this instance. And I know anybody in CSM doesn't need an ITSM subscription because they're covered with CSM. So I'm going to go ahead and pull in everybody except my customer service agents. I'm going to add customer service agents to the CSM subscription. They both have ITIL, but they're different licenses that I want, right? So that's important that you're going to be filtering this through. You're going to have to understand that. A lot of people have naming conventions or there's some other attribute on the group that's going to tell me like the group managers department. The group managers department is CSM, customer service. They don't need ITIL. They'll be covered in CSM. Go ahead and click save. And what that shows me now is on my license, I have 17 groups added, 13 groups added, because there were 13 because I didn't add the 4, right? Okay. So I have my 13 group that need ITSM. Again, no users because I need to run the job. So I'm going to go back to my subscription overview. And on my subscription overview dashboard, there is a button to update allocation totals. I'll run that. This is because we want to see it right now. This job runs daily already to take care of this, but I want immediate gratification. And so now when I come in, I went from 0 ITSM Pro licenses to 401. When I click on this list, click on the subscription, I'm going to see those 401 users. That comes through. That's the number it's going to be shown. We're going to see that. From here, we can, this is actually the exact test set that's in the article about explaining the compliance report versus this. You can see the same numbers. But we'll filter out people who haven't logged in last 365 web service users to get exactly what number is matched. So if you've gone through, we didn't talk about direct role assignments. That shows up on how you identify those. And again, that's not just a discrepancy between the reports. Those are things you don't want to have. You want to address those. We want to make sure the groups are set up to come through. And again, it's not completely automatable because there are cases where you need to decide who should actually be paying for the subscription. Which one do I want to use? And with that, we've had issues in the past where we just assume, and assuming doesn't work well, right? We want you to have your input on what you want to have, where it comes from, and what goes through. Okay, I think we got through the whole demo. We went through, again, we set up ITSM, we went through all the different steps to get this through. This is automatable in some ways, right? To be able to show me, at least get me that list of groups. We'll see some write-ups on how to make this a little bit smoother. But what we wanted to do is show you how you can do this right now with no code changes. It is a bit ugly to use this Excel export, but it does work. It's pretty straightforward to do. It's not something I'm going to do every day, but it might be something I do once a month to audit my groups coming in. As part of my actual management, I want to make sure that I'm looking at when roles are added to groups, that needs to have an approval flow. When users want to be added to groups, that needs to have an approval flow, right? That's something we need to audit every once in a while. Okay, and with that, we're going to end the demo, and I'm going to switch back to give you a couple more resources to look at. Next, some useful tips. These are some things that I do on the instances that I work on. You don't have to do them, but they do make my life a little bit easier. First of all, what I do on the group form. So out of the box, I can go to a subscription and add the groups to subscriptions. The group to the subscription. There's a related list sitting there waiting for you on the group form to allow you to add subscriptions to groups. So what I'll do is go into my group form, SIS user group. I'm going to create a new view for subscription management, create a new one for that so I can make changes and not have to worry about breaking anything out of the box, writing something new. And on that, I'm going to add the related list called licenses. You go to add related list licenses. When you add that, the display name is managed subscriptions. And from here, I can edit my groups. I can add the subscriptions to it. So as I'm editing my groups, as I'm managing groups, I also manage subscriptions. Who's in the group? What security levels does this group have? What subscriptions does it need? Which one should it have? I can do that all in here by exposing that related list. Next one I like to add, roles are very important to what goes on, and they can, again, they're very important to me. And I want to understand the entitlement, the same as the security. So I will go into my roles. I'm going to add a subscription management view to SIS user role. And on that, I'm going to add contained by. I find this one to be very interesting for me as well. Out of the box, we get contained roles, which are the roles that this role owns. But then I want to see the ones that inherit this role. So we can have limitless stacks of chains of roles that are inherited and inherited and inherited and inherited. This gives me both the parent and child to this group, the parents and the children. And the other one I add is the subscription role. So there's a table called license role, or the physical name is license roles. The subscription, the label is subscription roles. That shows me that the ITIL role is a fulfiller for incident management. As I look through these things, it'll tell me, hey, this is used for, this is a fulfiller for problem management, a fulfiller for case, whatever that is. I can see that here. I want to make sure I'm seeing subscriptions everywhere I can cause them to be consumed. So on the roles, on the groups, let's get as much information out there as possible. And a few more resources for you as we go through. So one, we did a quick overview here. There's a little bit more in depth into subscription management in Now Learning. So the subscription management overview, 20, 30 minutes. I recommend everybody take this. It walks through all that basic stuff about subscription management, talk a little bit about custom roles. This was updated in August. And so if you took it before then, you should take it again. At this point, this has not been updated for Rome, and I don't know that we're going to update it. It's the same for Quebec and Rome. So go ahead and take this one that's there. But really helpful. And if you haven't taken it, take it, even if you went through this. And anybody's asking questions, go make them take this so we don't have to start with the basics. Next is setting up groups. Again, this is the demo we just did, step-by-step walkthrough with a few more tips and tricks to come through. It's got all those table names. It's got stuff to cut and paste if you need to do that. This will make it simple to do. This is the key differences between ServiceNow issued compliance reports and subscription management, and what you see there. Again, we made some notes about what's different. This walks you through exactly what's different and how do you reconcile those two things? So they may be off, but we can explain it, we can understand what's going on, and then move forward. So that's a very key resource for you as well. And then the last resource I have for you is the forums in the Now platform, in the community, Now platform forum. There's a tag called subscription management. I am subscribed to this. There's a few others on this call that are subscribed to it as well. You post a question in here, we're going to see it. Lots of great information here as well, right? You're not the first one to do this. This is something everybody has to use, go through. If it is, how do I structure this? Great place to ask that, right? What are other people doing? You can directly ask other customers, partners, how it's going. ServiceNow, we're monitoring this as well to come through. Great resource to find out the answers to your questions or ask your questions. And with that, we can answer any other questions that come up, that have come up. Anything sitting in the chat?
Yeah, we got asked how we can see the compliance reports.
So for a compliance report, you need to talk to your account team, and they'll get it for you. They're actually manually generated and reviewed to come through. So it's not an automated thing you can push out. That's what subscription management is getting very close to and combining. But that's, talk to your account team, and then they'll be able to explain it to you and walk through kind of what actions do you want to take. Where we're trying to build up with more subscription management is that you already know what's on there, and there's not going to be any surprises. Today with the compliance report, there can be surprises, and then you're going to want to work through those with your account team.
Okay, thanks very much.
All right. Then with that, I'm sure I'll be hearing from you in the community. That's the best way to get out of there. I was the first one to join, so I'm Adam. Just tag me at Adam Stout in the community. I will see it, and I will be happy to answer your questions when I can. Posting it there. The best part is you don't have to wait for me. Renee is on there a lot. He might be able to help you. A lot of our compliance team is on there as well, so we can help you with that. I will note that if you have a question about your subscription, a specific product code or what you're seeing, don't ask it there. We're not gonna be able to help you there. Ask your account team. But if you were talking about how do I configure this, or how do I set up my groups, or what did you do with this, it's a great place to do it. But just, we want to stay away from anything that's company sensitive for you. Don't post that in the community.
Perfect.
I've also put the community post in the chat. So for everybody who's not yet subscribed to this Academy series, make sure to bookmark the overarching post. I posted this specific session, and I will also update that community post with the YouTube link once this is edited and uploaded.
And Lisa, it looks like we have one more question in the chat. Was asked if the read-only role affects the subscription.
That is a very good question that I do not know the answer to. As an example, great question for there, because it's not yours. I will go find that out, and then we will figure out what do we need to do. Also, one of the things that we're going to do is talk to the compliance team about how they handle it and address it, so we can match that. Again, we want to. There are a little bit of bumps between that, and we are working very actively to get rid of those, so everything's very transparent. That is our goal with this: is transparency, give you the governance tools. And I will go find out about what happens if I add the read-only role, if that negates the fulfiller role.
You want to close it out, Kiernan?
Yeah, I was going to say, and as usual, typically we're going to ask, put out a couple of polls and ask you to vote about the content of the Academy. So I'm going to launch that now, and if you could provide feedback, that'd be fantastic for us.
Right. Well, the Academy is running. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I think this was a very interesting topic today. Thank you so much, Adam, for being a speaker this time and not just lurking in the background and hassling us. Nah, just kidding. As I said, everything we will edit this and upload to YouTube. We hope to see more questions on the community or on the YouTube channel. You can subscribe to the playlist that is on YouTube as well, and check out the other sessions that we have. Some of the upcoming topics for the next weeks or for the rest of the year will include platform security in the version of some more info on roles and groups from a platform security standpoint, as well as in 2 weeks, the next session will be about decision builder and how to uncouple your decision logic from Flow Designer into decisions that your business folks can also adjust. And that's about all I have for today. Thank you so much.
gonna end the poll now. So here we go. Awesome.
Thank you.
Got some great results.
That was awesome.
Have a great day, guys. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.